Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dr. Carolyn Coker Ross Show. I'm here today with Joey Atlas, who's an amazing fitness advocate and expert. And I'm going to be talking to him about everything you need to know to make your exercise really doable and sustainable. Welcome to the show, Joey.
Thank you, Carolyn. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how you got into the fitness world.
Okay, great question. I had the privilege of being in a household where my father was into exercise and taking care of himself from a physical fitness aspect. And back in the early 70s, that was very uncommon.
Yeah.
So looking back, I feel privileged to have had at least one parent who was into it.
Yeah.
And that made a very big impression on me.
Now, did he teach his kids to be
He sort of, he didn't force it on us.
Yeah.
He just simply led by example. And then when we showed interest, he would then do more with us.
Mm-hmm.
So when we showed interest, he would set up some little weights. He would set up little body weight exercises we could do that were easier versions of the things he was doing around the house. And he just kind of fueled the natural interest we were showing. But he never forced it, though. It was very natural.
That's a really important point, because so many people who are parents don't know whether, to push their kids into exercise or
Right.
And so many kids are being signed up for multiple activities. They barely have time to,
I know.
free time.
Yeah.
So that's how you got started. It sounded like a good start in life, but it sounds like at some point you didn't carry through with that.
No, it's so seeing him, and even at a young age, it was very obvious that this effort that he put into taking care of himself set him apart from everybody else. And it wasn't just aesthetically or superficial or just for vanity reasons. You could see that his life was easier. He had a happier attitude. He was more pleasant to be around. He was stronger. He was usually healthier. And seeing that compared to everybody else, that did something for me. It was more than just the physique aspect of exercise. It was for the holistic benefits that were visible in observation.
Mm-hmm.
And that really did something to me. So that kind of fueled me from an early age to pursue that path.
Yeah.
At first for myself. The challenge was I was also part of an Italian household where food was life and more food is more life.
Lots of good food.
Oh, man. And then, so that combined with my natural tendencies to overeat and rely on food for more of my happiness turned into a problem for me. It was a very tough paradox that I lived in as I went into my late teen years and early 20s. I really placed health and fitness as a priority in my life.
Mm-hmm.
But I struggled so much with the nutritional aspects not because I couldn't eat healthy, but because I wanted to eat a lot of other foods in addition to eating healthy.
I see. Okay.
And
so did that lead to some problems with your weight, or what?
It did. It was, I struggled going into college with controlling my eating so that my fitness could be where I wanted it to be.
Mm-hmm.
The exercise wasn't a problem because I had plenty of time at that stage of my life. It was only school, some work, and working out. But the food part was where I struggled. What happened was early in college, I started hanging out with more of a health and fitness crowd. And some of these people would compete. in bodybuilding competitions, which is something I had never done yet.
Right.
And they all saw something in me and were very encouraging and saying that even though I was just a teenager, I should try to compete in the teenage classes. And I loved the idea, but I knew the struggle was going to be the food part,
Right.
and not eating all the foods I love to eat. I realized I had severe emotional connections to food. But I also saw it as an opportunity. I saw it as an opportunity to try to overcome some of those emotional attachments to all these great foods that I've become accustomed to eating, and usually eating in too high amounts.
Yeah.
So I embarked on that path. My goal was to compete and win. And so that goal of competing to win was stronger than my desires to eat all those rich, awesome, tasty, delicious foods that I loved so much. But it was only for a short amount of time that I had to give those up. So it was doable.
So it was almost like being on a diet then.
Correct. And it really felt like it. It was hard, but I was able to do it. And even though it was a struggle, it was something that would become a learning lesson for me to apply later in life.
Now,
And so,
I know when we talked before, you mentioned to me that I think maybe when you were in your late 20s, early 30s, that the weight did get the best of you. And how did that feel for you, reflecting back on, the picture you had of your dad being so strong and fit and so on. And then here you were, overweight and not as fit, if
right.
not whatever.
Yeah. So I went into, but by my early 30s, I was already in marriage, number one. We had plenty of dysfunctions. Some of them revolved around food, and my weaknesses with food, and the circumstances caused food to become my main crutch, my main drug.
Right.
And I probably started eating more than ever at that stage of my life, and my weight really started to get up there. For a guy who's only 5'2", getting into the 160s toward 170 was very painful.
Yeah.
I had never been that high in my life. And not only was it physically painful, but my medical profile and my vitals were starting to show signs of decaying internal health as well. My triglycerides were bad. My glucose levels were bad. My blood pressure was getting worse. My cholesterol ratios and the total number, everything was getting worse. That should get worse when you gain a lot of weight. And that was all happening. Things got to a point where I realized, okay, I know I have issues, but now I need to start doing something about them. And when things got really painful and scary, that kind of motivated me to pull back and start taking control.
Okay.
Any way I could, because it made me realize what was going on here. I was self-destructing. And I had 2 young kids to live for. I still had a lot of life ahead of me. And I didn't want to let the dysfunctions of my external life and the internal battles of myself cause my self-destruction. So I just started becoming much more mindful, much more self-aware. I reflected back, and I remember phases in my dad's life as well, where he wasn't always perfect. He had phases in his lifetime where his workload was beyond normal. His outside demands were beyond normal. He was taking side jobs because he was in high demand. And his exercise routine would take a back seat for an amount of time. Being in the Italian household we were in, and his love of eating would get the best of him as well. And he would get out of shape. He wouldn't get dramatically overweight, but he would get out of shape.
Yeah.
And what I was able to see was when he got like that, when it was bad enough, he realized he had to change things up to get back to his normal, what felt good to him and the way he liked to live life. So reflecting back on that, I realized that we're all human. We all have these ranges in our life. And some of us are self-aware enough that when we get too far off center, that we know what to do and how to think in order to get back to center. So I knew I had that within me. And that's when I started kind of reeling things in my early 30s, knowing how much worse they could get. I didn't like the prospects of things getting worse than they were. Yeah. And that woke me up.
I want to just put in a little bit of a comment about weight and health, because we know that there are many, many people who can be overweight and still be metabolically healthy. That doesn't necessarily mean your cholesterol will go up and your triglycerides and so on and so forth. So I don't want to leave that impression.
Right.
Because fitness is one of the best ways to stay healthy no matter what your size is.
Yes.
Yeah. So
yes.
I want to just segue now to talk about how you got into this whole notion of making exercise more fun, more available, more accessible, starting with exercising on the playground. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So part of the struggle in my early 30s when I was going through that tough phase was being a dad, having young kids, having a business, having other demands and responsibilities in life that were not present in my early 20s. The demands of your schedule are different. Your time gets tighter. You're required to do other things. So I realized I'm trying to do my fitness in a way that I used to do when I was in my 20s, and this isn't fitting anymore.
When you could go to the gym and stay there for an hour and a half, 2 hours if you wanted.
Exactly. Right. And beyond that, that style of working out was actually feeling counterproductive to my results in my body. My joints were hurting. My back was hurting. My elbows were hurting. My knees were hurting.
Yeah.
I did not feel good as a result of my workouts. And that's the whole point of exercise, is to feel good.
Yeah. We cannot emphasize that enough. That's the whole point of exercise.
Right.
In the diet world, the point of exercise is to give yourself the privilege of eating. You know, some people feel like they have to trade off food by exercising so they can eat. And that shouldn't be the case. It should be enjoyable.
Yeah, absolutely. So I realized, okay, I have to change this somehow. And so started to think back about how my dad used to train around the house, or when we would go on vacation, he would find a playground, and some of the pictures he used to show me from when he was in the military here. And then going to my education of exercise physiology and the biomechanics of the body, I started just doing my own workouts on a lot of the local playgrounds and leaving the heavy weights and hardcore stuff behind.
Why did you pick the playground?
Well, if you look at most playgrounds these days, if you look at them a certain way, you realize, wow, you can do so many exercises on a typical playground if you look at it a certain way, and you move your body in relation to gravity with all the variations you have available to you. You can work every muscle group as deeply as you want to if you move properly, which for me, having the biomechanics background through exercise physiology, it made me see things very differently than the normal person would see when they look at a playground and how a body could move on all the different pieces and parts of a playground.
Did it also seem to you from your mind's eye that it might be more fun?
Absolutely. So I love being outside.
Yes.
And in certain climates and locations, and when the weather was right, you could work out outside on a playground. So that was beautiful. It was just enjoyable. Like I could travel, and if all I had to do was find one playground, and usually you can find more, but you could get your workout in outdoors in less than 30 minutes. Yeah. So not only was it gentler on my body, but the training sessions were much shorter, which means I could fit them into my schedule now. So 30 minutes as opposed to 90 minutes is very, very different when you're a busy adult, right?
Right.
And it was more fun, and my body was feeling better. My joints were not hurting anymore. My back was not hurting anymore. I didn't have these bouts of tendinitis and joint aches. And for that reason, it was enjoyable. because the pains were going away. And all that to boot, the results were actually getting better because I was able to do this more consistently for way longer periods of time. And when you do that and you're eating decently, then your results start to compound and you start to see and maintain changes.
Were you at all embarrassed that you were out there with the little kids? Or
No. I actually loved it because when there were people around, the little kids would look at me like, hey, look what this dad is doing. Mom, and they would say to their parents, Mom and Dad, why don't you do this too? Right? And so some of them would say, yeah, I'll do it. And I would teach them. I would show them. I love sharing, love teaching other people the example. And some people would say, oh, no, I don't work out. I'm just going to sit here on the bench. Fine. Yeah. But it was actually a lot of fun seeing what the different reactions would be from different kids and different parents and grandparents. Yeah. The way I see life is I'm here to inspire people and lead by example. So if that means setting this great example on a playground that is outside the norm, then that's what I'm here to do. And it benefited more people than it hurt. So it awesome. Still works to this day. I still do it. When I travel, I usually look for a playground to work out on. And I look to set that example. And these days, what's cool is that people will ask me, well, how did you start thinking about doing this? You know, you're obviously not young anymore, but you're in awesome shape. You look healthy. How did you think about doing this? And, you know, how can I do more of this? What's great is that I can share my YouTube channel. I've got playground workouts on the YouTube channel and people can go and follow them for free. Okay. And I feel like I've helped somebody in society, especially young parents. Young parents have their hands tied, right? Like you're raising children. One of the places you're going to most often is the playground. Well, what if every time you go to the playground, you can also get your physical fitness in? How cool is that?
It's a genius idea. One drawback I can see is the weather, because you're on the East Coast and in the winter, it couldn't have been too much fun working out on the playground.
You are dead on correct. So the weather was a problem.
So I know that you created a solution to that, but before we get to talk about your solution and how wonderful it is, I'd really like you to just talk a little bit more about the principles that you use in exercise. You know, you said exercise should be enjoyable. What other things do you see that really works when we're thinking about, you know, helping people start an exercise program or maintain an exercise program?
Right. Great question. So some of the key principles they're actually quite contrarian to what's in the mainstream right now. So mainstream, you see this push toward high intensity, fast movements, no pain, no gain. You got to push hard to get your body to change. You know, you have to do this muscle confusion stuff. The truth is, instead of complicating things and making things more grueling and painful, the way people stick to something is if you simplify it and make it more enjoyable and gentler. So
enjoyment and simplification are important.
Exactly. So we as humans, we generally don't like pain.
Right.
We don't like punishment. We don't like self-torture. So you can't do those things that are expected of you on a daily basis if that's what your fitness program is calling for, because then we want to quit.
Yeah.
And most people do, because nobody wants to be in pain again on Wednesday and Friday and Saturday, whenever it is. Yeah. So the principle wise, how do we remove that? So the way to remove that is moving the body in a much slower manner through natural movement patterns. When you move the body more slowly through exercise movements, you remove the element of momentum, as opposed to fast movements, which take advantage of momentum.
So, for example, the kettlebell, swing, I don't know what you call that exercise. It terrifies
That's what it is.
Okay.
Kettlebell swings.
Yeah, the kettlebell swings terrify me because of the momentum issue.
And they should, rightfully so.
How easy it is, in my mind, that you could hurt yourself like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, most of most of the crowds that are doing that are your millennials,
Yeah.
but you'll also have some people in the slightly older age ranges trying to hang on to their youth through intense exercise.
Right.
And, you know, the injuries, they speak for themselves. I mean, orthopedists, chiropractors, physical therapists, most of their patients are coming from these high intensity exercise programs and classes and regimens.
Yeah.
But the key, I don't even think I ever touched a kettlebell in my life. And so we talk about momentum. You do a kettlebell swing or something along those lines, and once you get a weight in motion and you're moving quickly to complete that motion, the momentum you achieve by moving that item through space is doing the movement itself. So now your muscles are just guiding it, and then they're stopping it and slowing it down, and then opposite direction again, momentum, and then stopping it and slowing it down. That does increase the risk of injury by nature of how you're doing those movements. Our joints take the brunt of starting and stopping those movements.
Yeah.
The muscles are prone to tear and strain in those types of movements as well. And those are the most common injuries that happen: joint injuries and muscle tears and strain. But here's the cool thing. When you remove momentum from any movement of exercise, what happens is your muscles or muscle that you're using for that particular movement has to engage itself to complete that movement, because momentum is not doing it for you anymore.
Okay.
So the muscles have to do it.
More bang for your buck then.
Right. So now you have more muscle fibers being recruited to perform a certain body movement because you've taken out momentum and fast, dangerous movements. You've reduced the risk of that exercise dramatically.
Wow.
And you increase the safety dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, you reduce the number of repetitions you have to do, because each repetition is giving you a deeper, more thorough stimulus of the muscle and the muscle fibers in that muscle for that particular repetition. So instead of 15, you may only need 7 or 8.
I don't want to get too technical here, but what are your clients saying about how you're teaching them to work out?
Well, it depends where they're coming from. So contextually, I may have like a veteran fitness pro who's also taking care of themselves as well. And they might be in their late 50s or early 60s. You know, they might have 3 or 4 certifications. They were a trainer in their younger years. They still do a little bit of training. And on the other hand, I may have a completely sedentary person in their late 40s who maybe dabbled in a couple of aerobics classes 20 years ago.
Right.
So this is all contextual.
Right.
What they're saying, for example, the person who has a very deep fitness background and certifications and has trained people is very surprised that this little known contrarian type of unconventional exercise is making them feel like they're working out so much more effectively as compared to the HIIT style of boot camp training and heavy weight throwing that they were doing.
Okay.
All right. Some of them are surprised. Some will even admit they're slightly embarrassed.
Yeah.
But, you know, they come with honesty. And so for me, I don't care how they feel. What I care about is that they learn and they're open to it, and now they can take that to other people.
Now, what about the sedentary one?
Sedentary people, they're surprised because in their head, they're thinking, well, I was seeing on TV and I was reading in the magazine that this HIIT training is how I have to get the belly fat off. And if I'm not raising my metabolic threshold through the roof, then the fat's not going to come off and my body's not going to change. It doesn't make sense. You're doing the opposite, but I'm feeling like I'm getting safer and more stimulation through this slower, more controlled, more enjoyable way of exercise. How is this possible? For them, it's very confusing.
Yes.
And so I explained that the mainstream is the mainstream. There's a lot of momentum there. There's a lot of advocates. There's a lot of energy behind all that, right? And so just like any other industry, you're always going to have like this little unique group of people who are doing something different out of pure necessity and need,
right?
Because they couldn't do the other stuff, but they still had to find their way. And this is how we're doing it. And we're teaching it to people exactly like you, who maybe had a back injury when they tried a cross-training class, or maybe you tore your shoulder when you were doing a high-intensity boot camp, or maybe you dislocated your knee when the trainer was having you do hack squats with the plates loaded on each side.
Right.
You know?
So we talked about simplicity, enjoyment. You also mentioned time efficiency. So getting the same results with less time, and also it sounds like less injury.
Yes.
Yeah. Have I missed anything? Is there anything else that's part of your principles about exercise that our listeners need to know about, or have we covered that?
No, so there's a few of them, and this might be the most important. When we talk about simplification, when you turn kids loose on a playground, they don't need instructors to tell them how to go run and play in a playground.
No, they do not.
They do not. And nobody has to worry if they're overdoing something too much, if they're going up and down the slide too many times, if it's going to create some kind of imbalance, or, you know, this is nature. So the way I approach fitness training, and I coach clients to approach it, is don't be so dogmatic. Even with my methods and approach, you don't have to be so dogmatic. The key is to be consistent and naturally varied as the days and weeks and months progress. There's enough variety in what I do and what we teach at the studio and what I teach clients long distance, where even without equipment, if you're in your own living room with your own body and a mat, there's still so much variety you can employ if you know how to move your body in relation to gravity and the way the body's designed to move. Mm-hmm. And we don't have to get complicated about it. We don't have to, journal every single movement we do and then make sure we're not doing too many of those next week. Movement is natural.
It's simple then.
Keep it simple, keep it varied. Don't over stress about trying to do too much of one thing or not doing too little of another. And the key is to keep moving, enjoy what you're doing, find variety, always go back to the things you really enjoy a lot, but don't be afraid to try new things as long as they're based on the same principles of safety and natural body movements.
Correct. Awesome. So you've now, you created a machine to replicate what you were doing on the playground.
Yes.
And so people can do it year round. They don't have to be out on the playground in the snow, right?
Right.
So people are going to really think it's great. So I understand that you had a machine that's been out for a while, and now you've just come out with a new machine.
Yes.
Just say a little bit about what the advantages of that machine offer.
Yeah, so the advantages are we get to do everything we were doing on the playgrounds indoors in one spot. Okay. That's the simple answer. So back when I was doing my playground training, I also had some clients who wanted to train on the playgrounds when the weather allowed, because they loved it. It was awesome. It was fun, and it was worth it to them. The problem was in Florida, it can get really hot sometimes, or it can rain like crazy. And then if I was traveling or what have you, it was too cold for even me to work out outside. Yeah. So this notion of bringing this experience indoors was really what sparked my desire to start sketching out what this thing could and would look like if it actually existed indoors. Mm-hmm. And my clients were encouraging me that if I could figure this out, I may be onto something really big. I didn't care about that. What I cared about was I just want to bring this experience indoors for me, my kids, and my clients who want to train with me. Because then we have our solution indoors, not outside anymore. We can go outside when we want to, but It won't stop us when the weather prevents us. So that was about 12 years ago. Made the first prototype after designing it. And as the years progressed, it just became very evident that I need to bring this out to the world because a lot of people wanted it and would benefit from it. And so that's what we've done in the last few years. We opened the studio 2 years ago with a full line of the new machines in there. And now we're also selling the latest version of the machine to end users at home all over the world.
That's incredible. It's amazing that you took it so far, that you were so passionate about it and you took it so far.
Thank you. Yeah, I didn't foresee it back then. I just wanted one to have. That was it. But all
Sometimes the best
forces,
ideas come that way, though, you know?
absolutely. But it's actually having people reach out and seeing your videos and the information you're sharing and them saying to you, will I ever be able to buy one of those? I want one because I want to do exactly what you're doing. Then the wheels start turning. And again, it's not about money. This is about realizing that I created something that didn't exist out of necessity, and other people want this too. And I started feeling the responsibility and the obligation to find a way to get it into their hands as well, because they saw the value in it for them and their families. And
let me just ask you one
yeah,
question. As you
sure.
know, I work with a lot of people who have food and body image issues. You know, some people who are living in larger bodies and are happy about that. So what's been your experience? I know you yourself was able to get back to your kind of fighting weight, so to speak.
Right.
But what's been your experience of using this approach with someone living in a larger body?
So I'll have clients that want to buy one who they're just very overweight, and I'll tell them straight out, this isn't for you right now. Like, there's still so much you can do without this that you don't need it yet.
Okay.
And
so you start them more on a floor exercise program, and I know you have a lot of videos, and you're giving us a link to some of the videos that are online for free that people can start with. So your recommendation is get started with something like that.
Oh yeah.
When you get a little more progressed, to think about the machine.
Absolutely. Again, if we're going to assume somebody is carrying way too much excess body weight, there's still plenty of road to cover without any equipment, or even the most minimal of accessories, fitness accessories like a mat and a ball and maybe some resistance bands that can give that person everything they need for at least a few months, maybe a year or so, in order to start building their fitness foundation, get the excess weight starting to come off, recondition their body, and get it to a point where maybe they can consider putting one of these systems in their home for them and their family to continue that journey on. Because that's really the view. It's the long-term view.
Absolutely. One of the things I also wanted to just ask you is, how do you deal with the fact that so many people who are living in larger bodies have had real exercise trauma? You know, I should use air quotes, because it's coaches who've told them they're too fat to do this, or they shouldn't be doing that, or does that come up with some of your clients?
Absolutely. I mean, it's probably 90-something%, because most of these people have tried traditional mass market approaches to forcing the weight off.
Yeah.
Right? You can't force the weight off with these types of approaches that are out there. And so when you take a commonly educated trainer or certified trainer or fitness instructor, they're going to try the forceful approach. Like, we're going to make your body get rid of this weight by forcing it to exercise. And all they know is what they know. Like, that's, we have to give them that.
I think they're well-meaning is what.
Yes, they're well-meaning. They're certified in what they're certified. And there's some great ones out there, excellent ones. But generally speaking, most of the experiences out there by people who are really off-center are negative experiences.
Right.
Because it's more than just the physical aspect and following a routine. It's more so the psychological and mindset aspect of change that needs to be focused on and dealt with first, if not for the most part, before that physical foundation starts to get put in place in a very serious way. I think the trauma is not so much physical. It's actually both physical and psychological.
Absolutely.
Right? When you try to demand an unrealistic performance from somebody who's trying to reach goals, and they can't live up to that unrealistic performance on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis, they get very frustrated and they get very down on themselves. And it's so easy to give up, which is what most people do. Right? Because it was too grueling. It was too demanding. it was too unrealistic, it was too painful, I'm going to find, if I don't come out right and say that and that I'm stopping, I'm going to find life excuses to give me the out from that situation.
Right. I'm too busy. I don't have the money, etc.
You
But
name it.
I was also referring to people who've had more direct emotional trauma. I've had patients who've had coaches or trainers who've said, you know, you can't stay on the team because you're too fat, or, who've made public comments about someone's weight that's very shaming and so on. Do you see that as well?
Absolutely. This reminds me of, I'm not laughing at the situation. I'm laughing at what the person did and where their mind was. Occasionally I'll go to a regular fitness center or gym when my son is back in town from college and he wants to bring me along, and, we'll go spend some time together. And I'll observe some of the trainers and fitness instructors working with different people. I like to make mental notes and just see what's going on in the industry. Even if it's in a very specific place like that, it gives me a good handle on some things. I remember seeing a trainer working with a client. Their definite goal was weight loss, period. And the client couldn't do the 10 repetitions that they were being asked to do. It was maybe 4 or 5. And the trainer was kind of yelling like, I need you to do 10. You can't stop at 4. You're slacking, or you're being lazy, or, something along those lines. And this person I was watching could clearly not physically do it.
Yes.
They were not being lazy. They were not slacking. They physically could not do another one of those movements.
Right.
And the trainer didn't have the depth to empathize with that person and realize that that person can't physically do another one. Mm-hmm. It's not being lazy. They're not just quitting. They're not just giving up. They could not physically do it. And so I don't know where the trainer was coming from in saying that you're giving up, you're quitting, you're being lazy, as opposed to saying, hey, that was awesome. You did 4. That's perfect.
Let's shoot for 5 next week,
Yes. So, and that's a totally different experience on the client side of things. Totally different. Yeah. When they get the experience that and told that they're being lazy, they're quitting, they're giving up, they're most likely going to quit and give up when they feel like they're being judged like that.
Yeah.
With inappropriate measuring guides. Sure. That trainer is not being open enough to seeing where this client actually is and that they are giving it their all.
Right. Yeah.
And maybe because the trainer asked for 10 and they only got 4, maybe the trainer felt like they're coming up short and they're going to take it out on the client, right?
Reflection on me.
Right. We don't know, but still, the end result is still the same. That damages more clients than it does good.
Absolutely.
And that's one example. There are so many variations of that type of episode that damage various clients and make them want to stop that program or that routine or seeing that trainer or what have you.
Yeah.
And it has to change. There has to be more compassion. There has to be more empathy. There has to be more of a nurturing style of guidance that is employed in the fitness realm, especially with people who are challenged.
We need to dispense with the one size fits all. We do that, the whole diet industry, it's all about you find this one diet and then you're going to be successful. And it just never works. We know diets don't work.
Right.
We apply that same one size fits all in the fitness industry where, well, everybody's got to do 10. If you don't do 10, you're failing. And I think that's really what I see a lot in my work with clients is that they're so turned off to exercise because they've had these really negative experiences.
Yes. It's you mentioned something about the diet aspect. When I coach people, when we first start, whether it's local or long distance, one of the first questions they'll ask is, okay, great. What kind of diet am I going to follow?
Yeah.
And I'll say, well, you're not going to be going on a diet. And they'll say, what do you mean? I don't get it. I say, well, you're not going to have to diet. We're simply going to talk about things.
Right.
And we're going to talk about proper nutrition, and we're going to talk about why you make certain decisions. And eventually you're going to start to realize that you never needed to be on a diet. You don't have to go on a diet.
Yeah.
You're going to realize that you just have to start thinking certain ways and learn a few things. And your diet, your nutrition is going to start to take care of itself through this process.
It's the difference between coming at it, like people come at exercise only to lose weight. And then once they've lost the weight, they stop exercising.
Right.
And the same with food programs. People go on a food program, but then once they've reached their goal or they can't do it anymore, they just throw it out the window. So the most important thing is that sustainable quality. And that's what I like about your work with exercise, because it sounds like having something that's fun, that doesn't take too much time, even that you can do in your own home and have fun.
Yes.
It might give people an entree back into the world of fitness, which is super important just for health reasons.
Absolutely.
No matter what your weight is. I mean, as you know, there's plenty of thin people who are not healthy because they're not active, they're sedentary.
Right.
And so it's super important to be active just to help with your blood pressure and all of those things. So.
Oh, absolutely. We have at the studio and people I work with, either local or long distance, I tell people it's okay if your weight doesn't even change, because we still have to get your balance to be better. We still have to get your muscle metabolism to be better so that you can prevent diabetes. We still have to get your bone density better
to prevent osteoporosis. Exactly.
We still have to get your range of motion better.
Yeah.
Right. So you start, there's all these things that can improve without any change in body weight.
And all of those things can make your quality of life so much
yes,
better. If your
absolutely.
Your joints aren't hurting you, and if you're not feeling shamed about your weight in the gym, you're much more likely to be active and to do that help.
And you can improve your energy.
Yeah, which
you can improve your mental acuity.
Yeah.
There's so many benefits that can come without losing a few pounds or any pounds with proper exercise. So it improves your entire life. You get to stay out of a wheelchair much longer. You get to be independent for a few more decades instead of people having to spoon feed you. It's so simple that it's actually, it doesn't hit home for some people to look down the road and think, what can these strengthening and flexibility benefits bring me if I make the investment now? How will those benefit my life in 20, 25, 30 years? When they can grab that future vision and realize that if they have their strength, their balance, their mobility, their mental acuity, that they're going to still have an awesome life down the road.
Absolutely. And from you and my standpoint, being over 40, it's, you just don't realize how fast it all goes.
Yeah.
You look up and, it's already there. So I just really want to, we have to wrap up now, but I want to ask you to give people a resource where they can find out more about you, and, if they want to contact you, what would be the best way?
Yeah, so a few ways, and everybody has their personal preference. So one, I've got a bunch of great free videos, and the shortcut link, you can put in the show notes here. If you're listening through audio, you can just go to joeyatlas.com. That's JOEYATLAS.com. And you'll see the free Fit for Life program link. Just click that link. They can get the free 2 weeks of videos. All my social media links are at the bottom of that site. And I usually do some stuff on Facebook Live. I'll do some things on my YouTube channel, maybe once or twice, sometimes 3 times a week. I'll upload some new videos into YouTube. Sometimes they're just how I'm working out. Sometimes it might be some mindset material, how I overcame certain obstacles and how other people can use the same lesson. And sometimes it's just a mixture of random things that I think are helpful for different people at different stages of life. But those are probably some of the best places to see what I'm putting out there, benefit from some of it, and then maybe even connect with me if that's what they want to do.
Well, Joey, it's been a pleasure talking with you on the podcast. I really have enjoyed it.
Thank you.
put that link in our show notes, so you'll be able to see some of the videos that he's offering to us for free. So
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.